Hi, and welcome to the Scenic Route podcast. This is the show for building a successful and sustainable business on your terms. My name is Jen, and I'm a rebranding sociologist with a soft spot for rhubarb pie. Each week, I'll strive to expand your branding, business expertise, and mindset capacity. I'm so excited you're here, and now let's get into today's episode.
Misty Lynch, CFP, is the owner and CEO of Soundview Financial Advisors, LLC. She is passionate in her commitment to help her clients handle their finances and lives with confidence. A fee-only fiduciary and independent financial advisor, Misty does not receive commission and is legally required by her certifications to provide unbiased and reputable financial advice. Misty hosts the unscripted reality show Heartbroke and the Demystifying Money podcast. She is also the author of Demystifying Money and a personal finance expert and resource for media outlets, including the New York Times, Cosmopolitan, CNBC, CNN, Investopedia, and many others. Investopedia also named her one of the top 100 financial advisors in 2021, and US News and World Report called her one of the 9 women in finance to follow, because sometimes you need life advice, not just financial advice. When she isn't writing and educating about finances or helping you become your best self, she enjoys reading, traveling, and skiing. Hi, Misty. Thank you so much for joining me on the Scenic Route podcast today.
Thank you so much for having me here. Excited to join you.
Yeah, this is still so new to me, so I'm still super, super excited. I'll probably always be excited if people be like, oh yeah, I want to talk to you. I'm like, yeah.
It's fun. I love talking to new people about new things. And
yes, exactly. And I also love talking about money, and I love that we have that both in common. Mm-hmm. So before we dive in to like a subject we all probably like and dislike to some degree, can you walk us briefly through your story? What were like the important crossroads, the pivotal moments that made you who you are?
Yeah, no, definitely. Because I certainly don't think I started out as a little girl dreaming about being a personal finance expert or talking about money all the time. In fact, money wasn't really something I thought about when I was a very little kid, which is probably ended up being a good thing for me. But around the time that I was about 10 years old, things certainly, my father's self-employed and there was changes in the business. All of a sudden, my parents were talking about money a lot. And we were moving, everything seemed to be changing. And so even as a little kid, I didn't understand what was going on. And I think this is how a lot of people start out with their relationship with money, is kind of just how you feel. And you might not even know what's going on. So I assumed money was this problem to be solved. And if we had more money, nothing would have to change. We could stay where we were. Things would be good. They wouldn't be there wouldn't be any arguments or stress. And so I think it was really early on is when I started thinking okay, money's the answer for all of this, all this stress and drama and problems. And of course, now that I'm an adult, I realize there were other things going on with my family at that time. I mean, business, being self-employed, as a lot of people listening probably know, is not always your laptop on the beach. There is some serious learning curves and ups and downs and stuff like that. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, you're so right? It's not the lifestyle on the beach. I mean, for some it is, but not all the time, I suppose. I love what you said, that money is pretty early on perceived as a problem to be solved.
Yeah, or even you might hear some messages I was always, my father did, he still has his own business. And I feel being in business, you're not out of business until you decide you are. So even if it's slow and you're not working and there's no clients, you're still in business until you say you're not. And so saying that his business was a success, I suppose it has been, because it's been his whole life. But for me, it was always entrepreneurship is the way to go. You don't want to have a boss. You don't want to have someone telling you what to do with your time. So that was another message that I heard early on. But then I was trying to, as I grew up, I was trying to figure out how to make a lot of money, because I thought that was going to be the answer to
all of life's problems and challenges.
Everything. Exactly. And so I was okay, lawyers make a lot of money. I watch Law and Order. I think I can do this.
Same. That's yeah. I would that, but I had that with house. I was like, maybe I could be an MD. Maybe I should go to medicine school.
Oh yeah. No, because you're like, I think I could do that. And so I really was just looking for a career where I could make a lot of money, but also I was kind of, even I think in a project I did in middle school where we were looking at stocks and picking them, I was super fascinated right away. I was like, oh, so you could just invest in other businesses and make more money and not have to do any of the work.
Yeah,
of that.
That's
and
smart.
So for me, I remember like telling them, like, I've figured out how to fix all this.
I love that.
Needless to say, I did not know that you needed to have money to invest money, but I did start to learn that you didn't have to have a ton and you didn't have to have it all figured out or have anything really fancy. So that's when I got really kind of started to go down. Investments was always something that was super fascinating to me. Yeah. And the more I started to study it and the more I started to understand it after I figured out that law school wasn't exactly the route I wanted to go.
Like, did you enroll into law school? Or
I was a political science major and I loved college, but also like I had student loans and some Pell Grants and stuff. So I really had to have I wanted to keep my grades up to keep the scholarship money because I needed it. So I studied something that I enjoyed. And so I was a liberal arts major, political science. I loved my classes. I mean, they were so interesting. It was a fascinating time. I was in school. I was in school during, early 2000s. So I mean, there was so much going on in the world. And it was just, I enjoyed school, but really having a liberal arts degree after college still meant I was waiting tables. There was no clear path for me.
That is very true.
Yeah. So I got a job in insurance, which I lived in the state that I lived in, had a lot of big insurance companies. And so I liked it, but always kind of felt that pull towards investments. But really at that time, giving people financial advice was still kind of limited to people who had a lot of money.
Yeah. Really managing big estates.
Managing wealth and no advice at all. So when I first started out in investments and I was in my early 20s, people were asking to speak to my boss. They wanted to talk to the guy in charge, my manager. They thought I was someone's girlfriend or secretary.
I love that.
Assistant or whatever they call me.
Are you? Yeah.
And I was like, and so I really felt like this isn't going to work out for me. And I ended up getting a job at at a big corporation, still working in the field, but I wasn't doing what I wanted to do. And I did that for about 12 years, kind of until I got to the point where I just realized that there is a huge amount of space for women, for business owners who need solid financial advice while they're on their way up. Not just when they're retiring, when they
already build the generational wealth, but
exactly
what happens
now, because they could certainly and most of the millionaires in the United States, they didn't have an inheritance. They didn't have anything. They created their own wealth. And so there's so much of that where even just a couple good pieces of solid financial advice can change that trajectory. If my family had a financial advisor like me in 1980, or 1982, when they were making a lot of money, things were really good.
Yeah.
That could have changed so much 40 years.
Yeah, when things didn't work out as beautifully anymore.
There could have been a cushion. There could have been something else. And so I realized how much that can impact a business owner, because a lot of us, we want to stay in business, but at some point we might weigh, okay, should I just get a job? Should I just get out of here? This is too much, or I can't.
It can be very stressful.
I can't see how to take time off. How much money do I need? How much money? And it's just all of these questions, and the answer is not always more. Sometimes it's just knowing yourself really well and knowing what it costs to be you and how you.
What is your good enough? Right?
What is it? And a lot of people have no idea, because they're comparing it to what they're seeing from everybody else. But once we start to dig into what they want, what things look like for them, are they somebody who would always love to keep working? Are they someone who wants to sell the business by the time they're 60 or something like that? And that's going to be a different answer for a lot of people. So that's the fun part, is really just digging into those questions with people without any judgment.
Why do you feel like most people are so hesitant to get really acquainted with their numbers?
I think a lot of times because of those things that we learn when we're small, we think of money like I talk to people, I talk to a lot of people, and I can't say that there's very many that feel like they're doing a really great job with their money, or that they have really a great understanding of it. I'll have people who are very wealthy be like, how am I compared to, like, am I okay? Like,
yeah, do I have enough? I don't, am I dying like poorly in old age? Like, yeah.
Our yardstick is like our parents who probably didn't talk to us about money because it was impolite or because they didn't want to or it stressed them out. Our teachers who don't talk about that. It's just not taught in school. And a lot of times here they're in debt too. They've got things going on, so they're not the money and so we really don't know who to talk to about money. And I love that some of my clients, like, I might be the only person that they can brag to if they have an amazing launch or some sort of sale happens or some sort of transaction, or they had a great year. They don't want to tell their friends because they don't want to look like they're bragging, or like, it's such a strange topic. It's so personal and it's so private that it's kind of like, I don't know. And a lot of people that feel like they really feel that comfortable sharing, good or bad.
Yeah, I mean, there's also surely the overshare when it comes to wealth.
Yeah.
We all know, like, the rich kids of whatever do on Instagram. Like,
yeah, you see that and you're just like, ugh, they don't deserve it. They didn't earn it. They didn't this. And we all have judgments. We all have these opinions and stuff. And so I think that it's starting to grow, that there are more people who are cheering each other on. There are people who are, because usually entrepreneurship is pretty lonely as well. So now there's more in whether it's, technology or people kind of coming together and online or other different ways where you are kind of like around people who maybe have the same dreams as you, but they're not in the same town or the same family.
You start normalizing also talking about money.
Wanting to have more money is not something it's not a bad thing. Most people, I think, if you ask them, they would say, yeah, sure, that would be great, or what would you do with it? And a lot of them have some really great goals that aren't just, I want to see it pile up. But it's so funny because it's hard to say, like, hey, this is these are my big dreams, and have somebody not be like, ooh, you sure about that? Why do you need that? That's a lot.
Yeah, like what? Stressful? Yeah.
And then you're like, okay, you're right. I should probably, either keep it to myself or stay small.
Yeah. I'm curious with that, if like from the clients you work with, do you see there's some sort of like gender difference?
Yeah.
How I don't know. I would just go out on a limb here and say there probably is, like, with most things.
Yeah, I think I've never really heard a lot of the men that I've worked with say, "Oh, I leave that up to her. I leave that up to her. That's she's better at that than me. That's her thing." Not for things like money. Occasionally, I do have couples where they make different amounts of money, but a lot of the times, if they found me, period, they probably see each other as equals, or like they want to make decisions together. They value each other. They might be co-breadwinners. Maybe the woman makes more. I don't have a ton of clients who are like, oh yeah, I keep her out of this, and I just want to work with you, because I probably wouldn't be the right advisor for them, because I feel like even if you're not bringing in an income, like say you're not working at the time, there is still so much importance for people who are in a relationship to be at the same, both at the table when they're making these financial decisions. Because I have seen some women who get divorced either later in life, or they lose their spouse, or something happens, and they've never managed the money. They don't know how much is there. They don't know what
the monthly expenses are, like, nothing.
They know how much, like, the little money costs, the shopping, the groceries, the day-to-day money. Like, no idea what's there for the larger money, and
clothes
that's
for the
terrifying. And that part, knowing the investments in the larger picture too are so important, because a lot of them are blindsided. They think they had more than they do, or they really don't know how to manage it. And you just certainly, I think the more, even if they're just sitting in the same room with me and we're talking, at least no one's going to take advantage of them or like try to, you know, if something happens, like they could at least feel like, at least I know somebody I could trust.
Yeah, at least I'm getting seen and heard. And
exactly. And I do think that there's different answers to different questions. It's really important. If you're talking about what are you going to do for that, like the rest of your life, where are you going to live? And one's like, oh yeah, we're going to sell the house and go to Florida. And someone else is like, no, we're not.
Yeah, no, I mean, like your money story is individual as your personal story anyway, right? Like it's not one size fits all. Definitely.
No, it's not. And I think you do learn a lot about people, but it's not conversations that people are necessarily having with each other all the time.
Why do you think that is? Is it shame or guilt or?
It's judgment. I think a lot of times it's judgment. Like it's very rare that two people see the same, you know, maybe overall, maybe they have the same big core values. Like maybe they value the home or security or family or education or something big. But if you talk about like, okay, well, I want to get this new car, I want to get this TV, I want to invest in this course, I want to do this. The person who's not doing it might be like, that seems like a waste. Why do you want to do that? You know, like, because it's not something that they want to do. So they may not understand. So a lot of times if we get that judgment or those comments, we just stop bringing the conversation up because like, well, I know what she's going to say, or I know what he's going to say. So I'll either just do it on my own or I won't even.
You kind of like start questioning yourself and be like, oh, probably I should not invest in this course. Yeah. And like kind of drop it.
Yep. And then you drop it or you do it and don't say anything about it, which is, you know, if you have your own money and you have that all figured out, then fine.
Buy the course.
Buy the course.
Like buy the shoes, whatever. Like I mean, if you're intentional with spending or investing in something, like why not?
Yeah, no. And I mean, I've definitely invested a lot in my own training and things like that. And I go very big with that. And I couldn't be with somebody who told me no, just because of my own money issue that I've done the work on and that I understand, like, because I've seen what I've seen, I will never be a person that doesn't have my own access to my own money. That's just like, period.
I mean, same. I'm a child of divorce. So my parents divorced when I was 16 and like, and I seen that, right? My mom was taking care of two kids for like 16 years. And that obviously when she had to go back to work was like, well, what did you do? You did nothing for 16 years? And she's like, well, not nothing, but it counted for nothing. So I was always like, well, I don't know. I want to be in charge of my money. Sometimes even also like to a default, right? Like maybe even too much. Like,
yeah, no, I agree.
I've seen it, right? Like it's ingrained.
Yeah. And I think that that's something that once we start to look at it and think like, okay, what did I hear all the time from my mom? Did I hear her saying like, you need to be able to take care of yourself? You're going to have to do this. You're probably absorbing all those
runaway money.
Yeah. And a lot of us have heard that because we come from, you know, our parents are from a generation where like women didn't necessarily have their own access to money or, good.
I mean, it's not so long ago that women couldn't own a bank account in their own name. So
no bank account. Right? I mean, you couldn't even get surgeries without your husband's permission. And I think there are still some like certain biases that happen in all sorts of industries towards women, where our moms might have thought they were helping us by being like, you better be able to take care of yourself. You better be able to do this. But then when we're struggling, we're like, I'm in danger.
Yeah, you sort of like, that's it. Like you make this quotation, oh, okay, danger, ooh, and you're trying to run against that. Yeah, that's a very good point.
So that kind of thing is where it's really helpful to kind of like bring people back to like, okay, like what do we really have right now? How much do we need? What are the bills? What do we have as far as our savings, long-term stuff? And kind of talking about it in a way where like when those feelings come up, it's not that they're going to go away or you can like train them out of your head, but you could recognize them like, okay, yep, that's coming from dad, or that's coming from mom, or that's coming from grandma, or whoever you talk to, because we have all these messages and they feel like the facts. And sometimes we just kind of have to create that for ourselves and figure out like, okay, well, I'm not in danger because I know I have this over here.
Yeah.
And I know I have this, so I can keep going, even especially if we have a regular income.
Yeah.
Because then we'll know like this is a slower month. But if I look back at my data, July is normally a slower month, and that's okay. You know, we can kind of start to like fight back.
Or you intentionally work towards like a business model that gives you a monthly constant revenue.
Exactly. We might say, how much do we want for the baseline? You know, what do we need?
Exactly.
And that might be a certain number of clients or programs, and then
it could even be like a part-time job when you're starting out, right? Absolutely. Like I really, and I sometimes said that to my clients, like, look, I see you're putting on so much pressure, like this launch has to work, where I'm not saying it will not work, but I genuinely believe you're not making the best decisions, the best sustainable long-term decisions when you're stressed in a corner with the back to the wall.
I agree. I think that there's so much that we see, especially online, about like going all in and being you know, just quitting the job, walking away, burning it all to the ground and just going for it, draining your savings and stuff like that. And then you're like,
max out the credit cards and start your entrepreneur journey.
Go ahead. And you wonder, like, okay, like that message that's coming through. And I do think you have to, but you can be, I did not leave my corporate job until I had as much money as I felt like I needed to survive for like an entire year. And I felt okay with that. I didn't feel like I was, because I knew in my head, this is going to happen. I'm not delaying. Like once I'm here, then that's going to be, because I'd kind of planned it out in a way, because or else you might be like, okay, it's never going to be enough, or this is going to happen.
Yes. I mean, that's it's a slippery slope.
So right. The runway can't be so big that you're like, well, but if you kind of have that clarity around, nope, okay, this is the smart way to do it.
Yeah, I have like 12 months of expenses covered.
You could go to that part-time job and not feel like a failure, not feel like you're not committed.
Yeah.
You can just go in there knowing, almost like that person that just gives their 2-week notice, knowing that this is temporary. If someone's bothering you or this or that, you can kind of be like, whatever, you know.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
I'm on my path and I'm going to get there. But yeah, I think there is a lot of pressure for people to, you know, be that, you know, go all in, like go down to absolute zero or go deep into debt in order to be devoted enough for things to work out. I think that's just so much pressure on yourself that I think that most of those people, the ones that don't make it, probably boomerang right back into a job way faster than they need to.
I mean, there are people who work really well under that pressure. Like then, if that's you, I mean, right. Like some people need that sort of external, like intense pressure. I would just be like, nope.
Yeah.
Nope.
And like, I know that's not me.
Yeah.
Because I've seen what it's like to scrape by. And I think that when you've seen it, like when you've seen really having nothing, it's different than being like, I could do it. Like, I'll just, you know, like I could totally believe
and it's different from like, oh, I will not have takeout for a month.
Yeah.
Like, no, you will not have food, period, for a month.
Like you'll decide which bill to pay. You won't want to answer the phone. You'll be constantly stressed. You won't be sleeping. Like that's what I saw as really like struggling your way through it. Where some people think it might be like skipping one night out a week or something like that. And it's not. When you go down to nothing, like you can't pay your bills with like affirmations and vision boards. Like I love them and I have them and I'm a big fan of them.
There's a place for them. Yes.
100%.
Hey, what would you say is like, what do most people get wrong about money?
Yeah. So I think what most people get wrong about money is that it's super complicated and that it's just beyond their ability to figure out. I hear so much like, I wasn't taught this in school. I wasn't taught this there, but you also weren't taught how to customize a blog post for SEO. You weren't taught how to do this or that or anything like that, but you learned how to do it because it was important to you at the time. And so a lot of times, like if we can have somebody else take over the money or we don't want to talk about it because we're afraid, that's our answer. Is like, well, no one taught me. Like money itself.
Or it's your excuse then in that sense, but no one taught me.
A lot of times if you're trying to figure out like even just how to do a simple budget, it's basic math. It's just like a lot of people feel like, oh, well, if I actually look then I'm going to have to lose something. I'm going to have to deprive myself. I'm going to have to start cutting back when it's not necessarily true. Like you might have, like, if you actually look at what you care about, what you don't.
But that's interesting, right? It's so ingrained, like that fear of, oh, I could be losing something.
Yes.
Like it's so ingrained, right? Like, and what just came to my mind, it's like, it's the same with, I don't know, weighing yourself on a scale, which you probably should never do. But anyway, you don't go because you're already like, see it with, oh no, I have to deprive myself of something I would like. That's really interesting.
Yeah. And you think like what's going to have to go is the things that I love, the fun stuff. Yes. It's a lot like food. I mean, it's a lot like people thinking, oh, okay, well, now what I'm going to have to cut out is the things
now I cannot like go to the movies or get the book or blah,
but it could be like, okay, do you love going to the movies? And it's like, yes. Do you watch TV at home? No, but you're still paying for all these streaming services or cable or something like that. Like figuring out like where the money's going and what you actually want from it. And some people do, like, I have some people that love to travel and some want to fly first class. Some couldn't care less how they get there. They want to stay in the nicer hotel, or some people don't care where they stay or what they fly, but they love to eat at the nice, like really good places. Yeah. When you figure out like what
is really important for you,
then you say, okay, here, where can I kind of cut back? And then funnel that money towards the stuff that I really enjoy. All of my clients, I ask what they're doing to take care of themselves. Do they exercise? Do they, how do they feel, when they pay, what do they love to buy? What do they love to spend money on? And then we could feel like that gets a place.
Yes.
And then hopefully if we look at the money, there might be, there's some people who might have more money to spend than they're actually spending because they're so afraid to run out and stuff. So it's really like, I feel like that's what a lot of people get wrong, is just like, if I start to look at it, I'm going to have to deprive myself and it's going to be painful. So I'm just not look.
I rather just avoid that altogether and like,
yeah.
And we all know avoidance is never working. Like, regardless to what topic, like it's just not
and like I've had some people in their awareness on like, oh my God, I can't believe I spent that much on takeout or coffee. And it's like, okay, so what? Like, do you want to cut it? No. Okay, then that's not where we cut.
Yeah, that's the thing, right? Like, I mean, yes, if you unintentionally spend $7 every morning for your to-go coffee, and you're actually like, oh, well, I don't actually, so over $120 a month. And I actually would have rather spent that on, I don't know, going out for a fancy dinner.
Yeah.
And bring your home coffee.
Yeah.
Try it.
If you don't feel good about it, like, okay, maybe you buy that $120 machine. You make yourself amazing latte every day at home.
Yeah. There you go. Get a nice travel cup and you're good.
But if you say like taking that break in the middle of the day at work, it's when I talk to my friends, when I go for my walk, I love it. Then we're not even going to think about eliminating.
It's my moment to like, I feel relaxed. I'm leaving the office. I walk a block or two. Like I see people there. I chat with them. Like if it's a part of your day that makes your day better, that you truly enjoy.
Yeah. It's not like just because you can do it yourself or you could make it yourself that you shouldn't outsource it. You shouldn't go pay for it. That's just, I think that's where a lot of people have made a ton of money in personal finance, shaming people for small purchases. Meanwhile, they've got like yachts and all sorts of personal assistants and maids and housekeepers. They could do that themselves too, but they're not. Trust me, they're not doing their own vacuuming anymore, I don't think.
Yeah, I know shame is a very powerful tool. It works, right? Because we don't want to be shamed because it, like, I don't know, it really decreases our humanity. It takes something away from us if we get shamed. And I don't know, I feel this is so, like, I don't know, I get so mad with people who use shame in whatever. If they're like financial advisors or fitness personal trainers or marketers or whoever, like I don't care. It's such an inhuman form to market. I don't know.
Yeah, it's effective, but I think my whole industry is based on like fear and shame, not like how much, like, and that's another thing with money, like it's not going to make you a bad person to have more of it. It's not going to change you who you are.
But you're a bad person regardless of how much money you have.
You're going to do bad things with more money. But if you're a great person, like think about all the amazing stuff you could do if you could. Like, I like to have people start to thinking about like, what would they want to do? Like, most people I think at their core are generous and they have good hearts and they want to like do good things. And it's just like, okay, like what would you like to do if you had, if you didn't have
how
to
much money would you like to
tomorrow.
contribute to good causes or your community?
Yeah. And you don't have to give it away. Like you could certainly do things just because you feel like it or you enjoy it, but it's just like, what would you like to spend more time doing, or what do you enjoy, and what do you want to bring more space in for your life? Because a lot of times money can give you that. It can give you some of your time back to be like, oh, I wish I had time to, I wish I had time to read more. I wish I had time to do this. Money can help. Like we could, okay, what are you spending time doing that you don't want to do? And it's like, you could pay somebody to do that for you. You could pay, so money can kind of bring more of that into your life instead of being like, oh, like, are you afraid of, dying broke and all? Like it's just like that's going to make people feel worse and probably not follow through with the plan as much as, well, hey, like if I had this at some point, maybe I could like take care of my parents someday, or I could take care of like rescue animals or all these other things that people have that they would love to do. Like that's exciting. That gets you out of bed. Like paying off your loans doesn't. So we need to have some bigger dreams and goals about money and like not feel bad about it.
Yeah, and especially I feel probably like what you said, you need like a goal where you have a positive attitude towards, right? Like a positive energy towards too, right? Like paying off debt like I know paying off debt feels good, but still at the same time, every time you look at your negative balance, you're like, ugh.
Yeah. And a lot of times people like, if that's there, and I'll talk to people like, what are some of your big financial goals? And that's what they tell me, I want to get out of debt. And I'm like, okay, like let's dream a little bit bigger, because when they get out of debt, a lot of times they get right back into it because your brain gets used to normal. Normal is a person in debt. And I had somebody who paid off all her student loans, which were sizable here. And then as soon as they were gone, she started talking about grad school and a master's. And I was like, why? And she's like, oh, maybe I'll get a promotion. Maybe it'd be good for me to do, like, not like I'd love to study this. I would have been a totally different financial planner if she was like, I want to learn about this. I'm really excited. Like, it was more like,
do it.
All right, why don't, well, maybe it'll give me a better job. And I'm like, what do you do? I think her brain wanted to go back.
Why do you think that is? That's the same with dieting, right? People
get so used to normal. Like, even if normal doesn't make us happy, like our brains are meant to keep us alive. And so if being a person who is struggling with is like normal, like we kind of get back, like that becomes the baseline. Not being super happy. And then when you don't have that stress or that pressure, or maybe all that weight came off, and then you're like, oh, I don't feel like myself anymore. It's a weird
or what I see also happens a lot with my clients, like we all do this, right? You have these if then expectations, right? If I pay off my debt, then if I lose 10 pounds, if I earn 100K a year, then a great entrepreneur, a great mom, a worthy, whatever story that's telling you. And when you pay off your debt, and that what you believe to become true is not coming true.
When you're like, oh, well, I thought if I made 100,000, I would love myself. I would feel proud of myself. And then you're like, but I don't. I just still feel like me. It's such a letdown.
And it's so true, right? And it's
you just have less debt or more money or less weight. You have to like, I try to get people to think about it and make decisions like they're the person that's already there. Because then when they get there, it starts to feel like normal. Like, okay, well, this client's giving you a hard time. And then like, if you were already that 6-figure business owner, what would you do? And they'd be like, I'd fire them. I'd let them go. I'd give them their refund and send them on their way.
Yeah.
Do that now instead of being the one that's like, I'm afraid. Because like, you can start to think like that person. And then when you get there, you're starting to think about the next level and the next level, and you're still excited instead of being like, oh, well, my goals are real small. And then when I reach them, all of a sudden I'm not happy. I'm not thrilled. And well, that was a waste. I might as well just go back to there.
Yeah. And the thing is like, it's twice as bad, right? Because it didn't work.
the way you wanted to, that if then didn't happen. So you also lost a piece of trust, right? Like, and a piece of hope. And so I feel it's twice as bad, right? Because you're like, well, I did that. That didn't happen.
Yeah.
So what now? So
So it's interesting how much of my time, like, it's not just always spent on the numbers and what people have and what they want. Like, a lot of it, especially people who are like, oh, I just want to be able to stop working. I want to be done. I want to retire. They don't even know what they would do on a normal day 2 months later. And that's why they get really depressed, because they've never really thought about it. Like, they're like, oh, I just thought, like, as soon as I didn't have to come here, everything would be wonderful. And it's like, well, you still have the same family you had there. And like, they're not going to immediately be like, oh, finally, you have free time for us. It's like, you might build in more time for them now. Like, all of those things that you're maybe putting off because you think that this one goal is going to be so life-changing. And it's not. Yeah.
And you also never know what's going to happen, right? I mean, I a friend of mine, and that's like such a sad story, but it's sadly not uncommon. Like, her parents were always like, oh, we're gonna like travel like a year through India when we're like retired. And they both didn't make it to retirement. They both died before. They both passed away. So it's kind of like, it's also dad, right? Like, you just never know.
Yeah. And there has to be some sort of balance. Like, I think that, you have to balance. Like, I really enjoy my life right now. Like, we're doing certain things. I have younger children. I want to enjoy that. I want to enjoy every part of it. Like, I'm not trying to be like, okay, well, once I get
a season now, and
and so it's like, okay, what can we do now? Also, that's why I like setting up certain things in the background where I'm investing in the background. I'm saving that, like, that's still moving, but we can still have some time for the things that we really want to do right now. My parents were the other direction, where like, when we had a lot of money in the 80s, like, it was boats and cars and like all stuff that made them happy right now, with no thought of the future. Because I honestly don't think my father thought he'd live past 60, because his dad didn't. So he was like, I'm going to enjoy it now while I've got it. And I get that, but I feel like there's a way to do both. And a lot of times people think that, well, if I don't treat myself now, then like, what if I'm dead tomorrow? I think it's trying to manage that, to say like, okay, no, we can't just wait, because your family, like, if you overwork and never spend time with them, all of a sudden when you're retired at 65, do you think the kids and the grandkids are just going to be over every single day? Like, they might have moved on with their life, there might,
and your grandkids might not even know you, right?
Like, you're the one that works a lot, or sends a check or whatever. Trying to figure out like, okay, what is really, really important. And that's very hard to do without a little help sometimes, because it's just overwhelming. That's where like coaches and advisors and stuff like that are asking you, like, and your brain can come up with these answers. It's just not what we're thinking about as we're going through the day. What would a perfect day be like for you if you didn't have to work tomorrow? And then I could be like, okay, why aren't we doing any of that today? And it's hard.
Yes, it is. And that's also one of my favorite coaching examples, when I'm like, well, make a list of all the things you would do when you're that 100K launch person, right? And then they would come like with big things, but I'm like, but go smaller. Like, so then like slowly examples come in, like, oh, like I would drink more water, and I would put like a fancy lime slice into every glass, because like, I don't know, I'm fabulous. And I'm like, yeah, that's true. And like, why can't you put like a lime slice today? Do that today. Like, it's then like, yeah, that's true.
No, there is so many things that like you could totally do right now on your way, where you're just like, oh, well, I would maybe, I would spend more time, I would dress differently or whatever. And it's just like, what? Do it now. Why not? I mean, you absolutely can.
You will dress more colorfully, well, then go nuts, right? Like,
do whatever, do your hair if you feel like it. And like, some people just think like, oh, but that's for that version of me that doesn't exist or isn't real, and gets to have those fancy privileges where you're like, no, you can do it now. And a lot of times that's what's interesting when I get people in. I've had people hire help cleaning the house because they absolutely hate it, and they're spending hours a week doing it, and it makes them resent their family, and they had plenty of money to do it, or they're one of my clients is, you know, she's a very successful therapist, and I'm just like, well, yeah, let's hire that person. And all of a sudden, like, it's like, oh, I have permission now. And someone's looked at it. It's not going to bankrupt the family. It's not going to do anything.
Yeah.
And oh my gosh, boom, immediately, like that next week.
Yeah.
Wow, that problem was
yeah,
solved.
but that's the thing, right? Like with permission around, I know I had this conversation with like I have one friend who decided to be like a full stay-at-home mom, and she had such a hard time. Like she and her kids have a lot of like allergies and like diet restrictions, so she was really looking into hiring a cook to like cook family dinners for a week, because it's, and yet so much guilt around this. Like, I mean, they could afford it. That wasn't a problem. But just like, hey, I'm a stay-at-home mom. Why am I not able to cook dinner for my family? I should be able to. And it was so hard. Like this, there's so much guilt, especially when it comes to care work for people who are for us women. It's insane.
Yeah. And I think that that's something that we do feel like, oh, well, we could do it ourselves. Like, I think if like, I have someone that every 2 weeks comes and cleans, because I hate cleaning. Cleaning was punishment in my house. Like if my mom was, you know, she was always cleaning, always doing stuff. And like, if we did something wrong, she'd be like, you're going to have to do this. And we're like,
clean your room, or like,
And so I never, like my friend loves to clean. She's a Virgo. She could clean a house. And like,
you will just,
I mean, it makes her feel less anxious. It calms her down. She will like love that feeling of like this. That is, I
love that for me too, but that's not.
I am not that woman. So hiring that though, but what that does is, even though I could do it myself, I am, you know, spending more time as a kid doing stuff that I like. I'm more playful. I'm more fun. I'm not unhappy. And like, I feel like that is something that women also do, is try to justify everything that they want with like, will this benefit everyone else? Will this do this? And if not, then I can't do it. Where it's like, my husband, nobody ever says like, well, couldn't you do that yourself? Or don't you,
can I buy, I don't know,
part of the shop or whatever? No one's going to be like, why didn't you learn how to like change your brake pads? And it's like, I don't want to. I'm going to take it to this person and I feel zero guilt. Whereas women were like, but I could cook a gourmet meal and I could do this and I could look perfect and I could make that. But I don't want
to iron all the shirts.
But like, is that really like, is it making you like, are you then showing up as like the happy, best version of yourself when you're like done? And it's like, no, I'm usually like annoyed, tired, grouchy or whatever. And like want to detach from everybody else, where get rid of that stuff.
And you start to build resentment. That's the worst part.
And there's a lot of caregivers that are like, I'm not bringing in income, so I don't have a say anymore, which is complete bullshit. Because if you look at how much unpaid labor would cost to replace it with if you are, you know, raising children, caring for
there are online calculators. I did it one time, and my annual income would be like 300K if I would.
It's about that. And it's not valued at the level that it should be. And so I like to, when I'm working with couples where maybe somebody's taking a break from their career, they've decided to do this, to point out how much insurance we might need. I don't sell insurance, but I do look at it like, okay, well, if you needed to replace, it's not the money because she's not making any or he's not making any right now. It's what you would have to pay for to get done, which has a pretty sizable value. That means that if you're judging every purchase that they make or making them justified or making things hard, and they have no free money to spend because they don't have it, that's going to cause a ton of resentment, which is very difficult to come back from. So I think having some
is a really dark pit.
When I start to sense that, it's like, okay, we're, you know, that's one of the most contempt and resentment, where you're just like, this isn't a money problem anymore. This is like a respect problem. This is like a valuing problem. And like, if you have enough money to pay for this stuff, but you don't respect the amount of work that they're doing or how much it contributes to the household, that's a different, I may not be able to help with that because like, but except for showing maybe that awareness of,
hey,
you know, that it's not just like sitting on the couch watching TV until you get home. Like, not even close. And so I think that caregivers have, oh man, I mean, I think that it's just, they need a special budget, I think, to take care of themselves and their needs and their own self-care, because you're right. If it's not making money, a lot of people are like, well, what do you need a massage for? What do you need a
like you're home with the kids. Why are you stressed? Like,
why do you need a break?
And that only comes from people who have never taken care of a child on 2 consecutive days.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. Or like, you know, my aunt was like a primary caregiver for my grandmother. It is just mentally and physically exhausting.
Yeah.
And it's just a different experience than like when they're rested or when they're this and you stop by for an hour. It's just a different experience.
It's always different when you have the opportunity or the chance to leave. It's never the same.
It's never the same. So I think that's where a lot of times knowing the finances, like when can we get more help when we need it? When have things gotten to a situation that it's not enough for you can't handle anymore? Or maybe if having a babysitter for part of that week or a couple hours of that day helps you be a better like that. If the money is there, then usually that's where I'm like, okay, let's try it. Let's see how this works. And like that's like a lot of problems can be solved by money. A lot of them can.
Yeah.
And it's just a matter of like feeling okay, letting it go or trying it out and seeing how things feel without that preconceived judgment and shame and fear, because it's all like no one else really cares.
Yes,
like,
that's true.
Your friends, whoever, your parent, like my mom doesn't.
But you don't even talk with them about money. So what?
No, I mean, like she might be like, "Oh my God, I'm horrified that like you have a stranger in your home doing like touching your bed or whatever," and I'm like, "I don't care."
Yeah, like me.
He's awesome. Yeah. I'm paying another person for valuable work. That makes me feel good, and like, I love it. Absolutely. I'm like, man, if I can hire somebody and help them pay their bills and build their business and talk about them to other people, then I'm all for it. That to me,
I mean, that's microeconomic. That's supporting community.
I love small business.
If you pay fairly, right? Like,
exactly. And I'm like, I think that this, that part makes me feel happy. So I don't care what anyone else thinks anymore.
No, exactly. Like letting go of like whatever. Like I don't care. I mean, that's generally good advice anyway. Like just not caring what other people think. Like I love how we like always kind of like how you always brought in like how you feel when we talk, like when it comes to money, right? Like because we always think like money numbers, they're cold and like they're like not part of feelings, right? And we've said like, okay, hey, look, be intentional with your money, spend it on something that makes you feel good, that makes you feel like you're a better person, and it has a ripple effect. Like you will be less stressed, your family will be happier, you will be happier, like kind of like. So I'm wondering, is money kind of like how it reacts to us, like kind of like is it mirroring our energy, our emotions?
I think so. Money is, I mean, it's zero, it's numbers in a bank account. Like now it's like digital, the transactions are pieces of paper.
It's nothing physically real.
Like, so we have so much energy, so much like charged emotions around it, around people with it, people without it, like all of these things where we just feel like we know who they are, like some people might dislike people that are poor or dislike people that are wealthy for no reason except for how it makes them feel about themselves. And so I think that the energy around money, once you kind of shift it or acknowledge your thoughts and your feelings around it, which my whole industry is based on numbers. Like you said, it's very cut and dry. There's no room for emotion when you're looking at like transactions, investments, like all of the, like some of the calls that I've listened to or seen people when I was being trained and stuff were so boring. Like, so boring because it's just numbers. Most of the people are zoned out. They're talking over your heads because the goal was to sound as smart as possible and have everybody
like have this
out and be like, you know what, you handle it. This is way too much for me. Where like when I said I wanted to become a life coach because I thought it would make me a better financial planner, people were like, I don't get it. And I was like, how could it not make sense to me? If everything we do is because we want to feel differently, everything we do, we either will do something or won't do something because we think it's going to make us feel a certain way. So if we ignore the feelings end of it, then like, how am I going to convince somebody to take 60% of this and put it over? Like, if they don't have any sort of emotional like
Yeah.
attached. So like that energy where like if we can really get people excited or motivated or hopeful or like out of that negative energy, and like we don't have to feel great all the time, but I do think that we don't always have to feel so bad.
Yeah, or sort of like so much shame or guilt or fear of just
And so I
facing our
noticed
money.
when I was, when I was talking to people with a lot of money that felt ashamed about having it, I felt saw people with little money that felt ashamed about not having more. And everybody felt ashamed and bad and guilty. Everyone. Then I realized that there's just a problem with how we are feeling, because if we are a person who hates rich people, when opportunities arise for us to make more money, if energetically we do not want that because we think they are bad, we will find some reason or some excuse without even knowing it. Our brains will figure out a reason to push that opportunity away. And I know that like, if you want to be a millionaire, you have to believe it's possible first, or it's not going to happen. And like, I've seen the negative money mindset that exists in my own family and things like that, where they're like, oh, well, that's never going to be us. And that's not going to be possible. Or, oh, look at that. Or must be nice. And those
look at
kind
her,
of
she has
comments
ideas.
Where I'm like, ooh, like, wow, like that whole energy it's just going to repel opportunities, wealth, money, abundance. It's not coming to you. And so I feel like once you start to realize that money is just, it's not this like pile that you have that's just people are going to take away from you. Like it moves around. It's supposed to move around. Like I like investing in businesses because then I'm like, hey, I could actually invest in businesses where I like their products, own what they do. They want to clean up water. They want to clean up this. I kind of like their mission. So if I move money where I want, move it, and then, or I provide value to a client that wants to pay me money, which I feel like is enough that I can run my, like, I don't feel like, oh, am I charging enough? Am I charging too much? What about like, once you establish what you feel like is a proper amount of, return for the value you're provided,
like,
it's fine. And you can just say without any judgment or shame, like, this is exactly what costs. And some people might say no, and some might say yes, and that's okay. But we have this whole energy like, oh, I can't offend anybody. I can't do this. I can't make, and it's all in our heads. And so I think once you kind of think about having a more positive mindset around money, or at least just an awareness that like, okay, I might not believe tomorrow that I'm going to be super successful, but maybe you start to believe that it's possible, or people like me have become successful, or people in my field have it, and you start to kind of make your way there step by step.
Yes. That's also where we go back to like affirmations. Like affirmations work if you have an affirmation that you have zero bullshit around. Right? Like, I mean, if you're saying to yourself, like, I'm a millionaire, like your head is like, no, you're not.
Yeah. They're like, no, you're not. You can't trick your brain. Yeah.
So you kind of like a bridge affirmation of like, I am financially safe.
Yeah. Yeah. I have enough money for today. Yeah. I have enough money to pay my bills. I have enough money to, do some, and that is better than, why am I always so broke? Because in your brain's just gonna be like, well, this reason and that reason or whatever.
Yeah. That latte.
I have enough right now, and that's okay. And like, and you can want more and still be happy with where you are, and I think that it's not like, sometimes it's tough when you're really struggling, but I think you don't have to punch yourself in the face at the same time. Maybe you don't have to believe like, hey,
it's not going to make you feel better.
No, it's not. But you could say, you know what, like, I have this step because I was sick and I had a lot of medical bills, or I had this loans or whatever, but I'm doing better now, or I made the best decision I could at the time, and forgive yourself for whatever you did in the past so you can actually move on.
Oh, yes. That's such a good point, that you are in the knowing whatever I did, it was the best I could at the time.
Yeah.
I love that.
And that's enough. Yes. It's enough, because some people are just so mad at themselves for, I've talked to people who like don't save in their retirement accounts because one time in that first job, they cashed it out and it was a big mistake. So what?
You start
You
over.
made it, you did it because you had to at the time, or you wanted to, or you didn't know. I've made mistakes too, but if I had just dwelled on them, I would have never been like, well, who's going to listen to me for financial advice? I used to, I used to bartend and I had no savings. Like, so what? Maybe that's exactly why people would listen to me.
Yeah, exactly. Because you know, right? Like, and how it feels if you bought a shitload of things of Amazon that you didn't want.
Yeah.
And now you feel shit about it. And,
Yeah,
and you
I've
look
done
at your
that.
credit score and you'll be like, ugh.
Yeah, where I've been like, you know what? I've had a package show up, like, especially when my kids were awake all night long and I was shopping to feel better and I acknowledged it. And then I was just like, wow, I don't even know what's for tomorrow.
Yeah.
And I was like, wow, like, okay, now I need to do this. But then I was just like, okay. And that's how I started even writing my blog when I started, years ago, I started writing a blog because I was like, why am I doing this? And I started to dig into it because I was like, okay, I could either say this is embarrassing and then buy more stuff because I felt bad and wanted to feel better. Or I was like, I bet a lot of people could relate to this, as opposed to being like, you are so like, this is so embarrassing. Do you like, this is like a
shame,
bad
guilt,
habit.
blah,
It's
blah.
such an existence. Yeah, no, I was just like, hey, like even I'm doing this and I'm trained to budget and stuff.
We're all still human, right? Like,
I was tired. I was stressed. I was tired. I wasn't leaving the house. I was kind of like, I wasn't, my routine was off, and like, I was getting tiny hits of dopamine putting things in my cart and swiping. And so I was like, okay, yeah, no one's perfect, but I do think that that's something that you can say, okay, well, how can I use this experience to like do something different instead of being like,
and exactly, and what you learn from it, right? Like,
yeah,
when you look at it, when you look back and be like, okay, I did the best I could.
Yeah.
I know now. Okay. Wasn't maybe the smartest thing.
No.
But at the same time, what can I learn from that now? Yeah.
Yeah. And instead we're just like, nope, our brains are like, I'm gonna remember this one. When you think that you can go get that promotion or you can go do something, I'll be like, no, you can't. You are a mess.
Yeah, I love that. And like, I especially think, it's so important that we sort of really look at a lot of the whys behind, as you've said, like, why did I bought shit at 3:00 in the morning? Well, because I was tired. I was not in community.
I wasn't not eating. I was, emotional. I was hormonal, like all of these things.
All
that
the
you're
things.
Just like,
yeah.
Okay. Like, I need to know, like, what will help if I have to, not save those credit cards in my phone on my account, have to get up and go get it. That'd be enough to stop me from doing it. Where I'm like, oh, I'd fill up my cart and be like, okay, if I still want it tomorrow, I'll get out. And most of the time I didn't.
Yeah, I started deleting the apps, like Amazon app, Target app, and stuff like that. It was like,
just delete it and like go on the website if you actually really want to go, or get in the car and go shopping.
Never went.
Oh, thanks. Yeah, there's a lot of things, like once you have that recognition, you're like, okay, like let's just be curious about this instead of judgmental, and you can totally make a lot of progress. And like, who knows? I think that that's something where once you like, I think that there's so much that comes out of like just having that energy of being just really curious.
Yeah, I never thought about it in terms of money, but I know curious is the way to go in business, to just be curious. And like, I think to really be curious with money, I feel that's really interesting.
Why am I doing this? Why do I want this? Why do I feel so bad about this? Like, why am I still paying for this? And I hate paying this bill. And like, why am I keeping it? And it's like, you just don't, but until you have that awareness, you're not going to think about it. You just might be like, oh, this again, or whatever. Maybe you're like, okay, maybe we need to change things. That's where you can start.
And about being curious and looking at the why behind it. You also wrote a book about that.
I did.
Tell me about it, because it's also something that you brought for everyone listening. They get a free chapter. They can look at download a free chapter. So if you want to tell me about it.
When I was, and that's one of those things, I always wanted to write a book, always, and I never did it. And then I was like, finally, like, why am I not, like, how I got curious, like, okay, how does somebody like me actually write a book? I know nothing about publishing. I know nothing about editing. I know anything about that. And I listened to a podcast that was a woman who kind of had a business where she like was like a writing coach, where she'll expect a chapter every Friday and this. And I was just like, and help kind of design the outline. And then they take over the printing part, like putting it together. And I was like, oh, like, and I got really curious about that, had a call with them to say, like, I know the book, it's in my head, but I don't know how to organize it, how to make it interesting, how to make it worth reading. And then I was like, well, I don't actually, sometimes I get writer's block sitting there because I'm better at like speaking with people than I am that. Well, what would I do? And then I was like, okay, I'll download this app where I could talk into it and it turns it into text. So I just got really curious. And then I knew myself, if I have a deadline or someone else counting on me, I show up, I deliver. So like I said, hey, if I have this, and she was in India, and she, you know, we had a Zoom call. It was 7 a.m. where I was and like 4 p.m. where she was, but we figured it out. And once a week we talked, and every week I knew I'd have what she needed because I didn't want to let her down. And so for my personality type, like that worked. And so I just, you know, we figured out how to like get a book written within like a matter of, you know, a couple months. And it was just because I was like, instead of thinking of all the reasons why I couldn't, like, oh, I got kids, I got this, COVID, whatever, everything was going on. I was like, okay, if I wanted to, how would I do it? And then it was like a different question where I was like, well, maybe I'd help, you know, I'd have someone help me with it, or I'd get this app so I could write it without having to sit at the computer for 3 hours.
Yeah, exactly. Experimenting with how you're getting just a step closer.
Yeah. And so I wrote, even with those, like those thoughts and kind of bridging your way there, like I went from thinking like I could never write a book to like, well, some people in my industry write books, or writing a book would help me speak to more people, do more conferences, things like that. It would be beneficial. It'd be cool. My kids would think it was cool. Like all these things that I was like, just kind of gathering these random thoughts. And then to the point where I was like, okay, I could do this, or I'm doing this. And then it was like, you kind of get your brain to catch up with you.
Yeah.
Because I could see it, knew it. I knew down the road I wanted to have that. I wanted to be able to, you know, have something that was like a really inexpensive way for people to get like all of the ideas, like some of the best thoughts that I have into one spot, because I can't work with them all. I can't coach them all, but I'm like, I could write a book and share it. And like, you know, maybe somebody, like I had one person told me, complete stranger, read it and was just like, I raised my fees because I felt so used every time I, you know, you know, I felt taken advantage of, even though she was in control of it the whole time. And she raised her fees. Her clients said, hi, sure, whatever. And then she immediately was able to like do more stuff and felt like a weight was lifted. And I'm just like, I want to just, you know, I want more people
that's beautiful.
to just start to feel like, even if it's just this tiny bit of permission to do it, like, or to examine it and feel like, okay. So that's where the book was really helpful.
Yeah, and it's so generous that the first chapter of your book, Demystifying Money, we will link it in the show notes.
Oh, great!
So
yes,
people can then like read the first chapter.
Thank you. Yeah, it was a really I really did want to just put everything in there. I think like you can't. The more value you can give away, it's just, I don't know. It comes back for sure.
Absolutely.
So I hope,
Absolutely.
Thank you. I hope that that's helpful for anybody listening if they do.
I'm sure. Yeah, I'm sure.
Thank you.
So I always have one last question, and that's because I'm always in need of. What are you currently reading?
What am I currently reading? I'm reading The Paris Apartment by Lucy Foley. So I have started to get back into reading like fiction, because for a long time I was reading business books. I was reading mindset stuff, and I love a good story. And so I and my kids like to read too, but we were spending a ton of money at like bookstores and stuff. So we started going to the library, and I finished The Last Thing He Told Me the other day, which was a great book. And now I just started The Paris Apartment like yesterday. So just fiction, good stories, mysteries. That's what I like.
I mean, that's so important. Yeah, right.
I zone out with them. And that
cannot always just read business books. It's
exactly, because it's like my brain needs to shut off, and like a good story is the way to do it.
Perfect. We will link that to you in the show notes, because I don't know, it's always good to have like if you don't have to think what I'm gonna reading next. You're like, oh yeah.
No, I love that question. Yeah, I have my little list of like, that's what's nice about the library. I'll put them on hold and then get back to them when I can.
True. Libraries are amazing anyway. So go support your local library.
Definitely.
Hey, Misty, thank you so much for joining me on the Scenic Route podcast today. It was a blast. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for listening to the Scenic Route podcast. I hope you've enjoyed today's episode and that you can take something from it that feels right to you. I'd be so grateful if you could share the Scenic Route podcast. As always, you can head over to scenicroutepodcast.com to check out all the links and resources from today's episode. Oh, and while you're there, don't forget to download my free email course, Intuitive Branding Invitation, to teach you how you can successfully tune into your own brand frequency and rediscover your brand's unique gifts, strengths, and talents. So thanks again. Talk soon.